Hello, good morning friends. Welcome back to your favorite channel Code1 Digest. Today in this tutorial, we will learn how to create Node.js microservices with MongoDB running in a Docker container. Yes friend, in this tutorial, I'll teach you step by step how can you create microservices in Node.js using Node.js module, how to connect it to MongoDB using Mongoose ORM module, then, how to run MongoDB in a Docker container and connect our microservices to the MongoDB running in a Docker container. So yes, friend, I'll show you step by step how can you create a Node.js microservices and connect to a MongoDB running in a Docker container. So it is going to be very, very exciting and very informative tutorial. So do watch this video till end.
What you need to understand, Susan, is that everyone has an agenda, okay?
Okay, friends. So here is the agenda of this tutorial. Let me quickly run through the agenda. I'll give introduction of project, then I'll explain you the purpose of this project through architecture diagram, what we are trying to achieve. I'll tell you the prerequisite, what all prerequisite required, what all software utilities required for this tutorial. Then I'll give you basic introduction of Docker container, Docker Hub repository, because we are going to use it here on a MongoDB. Then I'll show you how can you download a MongoDB image or MongoDB tag from a Docker Hub repository. Then I'll show you how to run that MongoDB image into a Docker container. Then I'll explain you what all important packages of Node we are using in this project like Express, Mongoose, Body Parser, UUID, etc. Then I'll show you step-by-step code implementation of our microservices component like routes, controller, service, repository, database models, etc. And then finally, we'll run our microservices into a Node.js and it will connect to a MongoDB running in a Docker container. At the end, we'll be testing our microservices, right friends? So it is going to be very, very exciting and very informative tutorial. So stay with me, watch this video till end. Friends, before we proceed in this video, I request you to subscribe this channel to grow Code1 Digest family. Friends, I'm creating a lot of quality videos on programming, coding concepts, design pattern and design principles, cloud and container technologies, but I'm not getting subscribers. I request you to like, share and subscribe this channel so that I can grow our Code One Digest family. Thank you.
All right, let's get started.
Okay friends, so before we start with our coding and implementation of microservices, let me explain you the architecture, what we are trying to achieve in this tutorial today. Because a picture tells more than 1,000 words, that is why let me give you a glimpse of project that we are trying to achieve today. So you see, big blue box is my local machine. In that local machine, I'm going to have a container, a Docker container running, and I'll be downloading a MongoDB image from a Docker Hub repository. Do you see? This is a Docker Hub repository on internet where I'll be downloading a specific tag of MongoDB into my local Docker repository and then I'll run that image into a Docker container. I'll be running that MongoDB into a Docker container and that runs on a default port that is 27017. So I'll be creating a port mapping of container port 27017 to a local machine port 27018. Applications are running in my local machine like what you see Node server and microservices. Also Mongo Compass running in my local host machine. Hence, I would need localhost port to access this MongoDB. That is why I have to create a mapping between a localhost port to a container port. Do you see that I have created this port mapping? What I am saying here is map container port 27017 to localhost port 27018. Hence, this MongoDB will be accessible to me on 27018 port in my local machine. I'm connecting my Mongo Compass on 27018 to the database, and also my microservices will also be connecting to MongoDB on my localhost port, that is 27018. I hope you understood the concept of port mapping. This is a very basic concept of Docker. If you don't know, go and watch tutorial on Docker port mapping. The link is there on your screen. You can see that. For now, you just follow the instruction, what I am doing, it will work for you. Right, friends?
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Okay, friends. So let me show you the prerequisite for this tutorial. You must have a Node.js installed in your local machine. I'm using version 18, but you can use any latest version of the Node.js. Then I'm using MongoDB Compass tool to connect to the database and see the database and collections available in a MongoDB. I'm using version 1.35. I'm using Postman API tool for testing our microservices, and I'm also using a Docker container version 20.10.14. You will need Docker container to run MongoDB into a Docker container. Hence, you should have a Docker running into your local machine. Right, friends? Okay, friends. So let me quickly explain you what is Docker container and Docker Hub repository if you are new to this terminology. So Docker is the open platform for developing and shipping and running applications. Docker enables you to separate your application from your underlying infrastructure so that you can deliver software quickly. Understand like this, you are running your application and that requires a Windows operating system or Linux operating system and few softwares, right? So if you want to replicate that application, it will take a lot of time to create one machine, then install the operating system, and then install all the softwares, right? It's a very time consuming process. But Docker solves that problem for you. It's a standalone application, the container having all the required software, including a basic operating system, what you need to run your application. And instead of taking hours for getting your machine ready, the Docker give you that container in few seconds. So the container will have all the required softwares, including operating system or dependencies or libraries to run your application. Right, friends? It is a very light version of your operating system. Okay. So Docker provides the ability to package and run an application in a loosely isolated environment called containers. That is what I was talking about. Containers are lightweight and contain everything needed to run the application. And Docker Hub is a repository for storing and sharing the Docker images. So now I'll show you how to log in into Docker Hub, how to explore the Docker Hub, how can you select a particular version of a software or dependencies that you need. So let me take you there. Okay, friends. So go and search the Docker Hub in Google. You will find the URL to open the Docker Hub. Click on the Docker Hub link. You got to sign in. If you don't have an account, you can register and create an account. It's a free service. I have an account. I will be logging in with my credentials. So let me log in with my credential. Yeah, Code One Digest. Yes, so I've logged in into Docker Hub repository. This is my repository, but what we want here is to explore to find the MongoDB image because we want to download a MongoDB image and run MongoDB image into our Docker container. So search here Mongo. So here you see Mongo is available. This is the Mongo and this is a command to pull MongoDB. But we want to download a specific version of MongoDB. So there are multiple tags. Every image that is available on this repository will be having a unique tag, and tag is combination of repository name and the version. So you see Docker pull is a command, Mongo is the name of the repository, and latest is the version. So latest is the version. Likewise, we can find many different versions of images available here, but I am more interested into the Linux flavor of the MongoDB, that 6.0.6. So I'll be downloading MongoDB, this version 6.0.6. I am going to download. Here is the command to download this MongoDB image. Docker pull Mongo. Mongo is the name of repository, and this is a version of that image 6.0.6. So I will copy this and I will download this image into my local Docker repository, and I'll run this image into a Docker container. Right, friends?
So this is the command we should be using. And just before that, let me show you, I don't have any MongoDB image in my local right now. I have some other images. There is no MongoDB image and no container running here. So I don't have any container running, no MongoDB image. So what we'll do is now we'll paste that command, docker pull mongo 606. So what it will do is it will download and have that image in our local repository, in our local image list. Let me do that. So now it will download that mongo 606. If you see it is downloading, it will take few minutes, maybe almost done, still downloading. Once the MongoDB is downloaded, then I'll show you how to run it in a container. Right, friend? Okay, almost done. Yes, so it says it's done. Let us see now. So let me clear this up. Now let's see the images. So yes, we have this image available. Do you see the Mongo is listed in the list at the top with tag 606 and image ID is given, right? So this is the image of size 653 MB that we have downloaded. Now next step is to run this image into a Docker container. So as I shown you right now, I don't have any container running. I don't have any container. Let me see all containers, even which are not active. So here I don't have any MongoDB container which is running the Mongo image. So what we'll do is now I will run this MongoDB image into a Docker container. So for that, let me show you the command. Okay friends, so now as we have downloaded the MongoDB image from Docker Hub repository, now next step is to run, and here is a command that we are going to use to run it. Docker run minus name is the name of the container. I am giving name of the container is Mongo 606, and minus p is for the port mapping 27018 to 27017. So what I am doing is, as we know that MongoDB runs on a default port 27017, so MongoDB will run in a container on 27017 port, but I want to map 27017 container port to our local host machine port 27018, right? So in my local machine, this MongoDB will be available to me on 27018, though it is running on 27017 inside a container. So this port mapping is to map the container port to the local host machine port. With me, friends? And then this is my tag, name of my image. Okay friends, so let me copy this and we'll run the MongoDB now. So Docker images, do you see we have this image, and right now no container running. Let me paste that. Okay, so let me again show you the command, docker run minus name mongo 606 minus p is for the port mapping 27018 and 27017, and this is my image tag. Let me do that. Yes, so it says docker container is running. Let us see docker ps. So now it's saying that container is running on local host, the container is up and running, and it shows a port mapping. So now what we'll do is we'll try to connect first our Mongo compass to this DB on port number 27018. Let me do that. So this is MongoDB localhost 27018, right? I'm trying to connect the MongoDB on port 27018, which is mapped to the container port of 27017. Let me do that. Yes, so it says connected. So it says connected. Let us see what all databases we have. It is having out of the box databases, that is admin, config, and local.
Okay friends, so now let's start with the code implementation of book microservices in Node.js with MongoDB. So before we start with the coding, you have to install those prerequisite packages what I was talking about. So you have to install the Express packages, and you can install using this command npm install express. But before that, you must have a node installed in your machine. You get node installed, and then you have to install this Express package. Same way, you have to install the Mongoose package, and the command to install Mongoose package is npm install mongoose. Same way, body parser, you can install body parser with npm install body parser, and you can install the uuid with npm install uuid. Don't worry, I'll share all this command in my readme file as well, so you will have all these commands readily available to install all the required software. Right, friends? Okay. Okay, friends. So now let me start with the coding implementation. How can you write microservice in Node.js? So we have to start very first with package.json file. In package.json file, we write what all dependencies we have, what all packages we want to use in this application. So if you see, I have defined the Express, Mongoose, body parser, and uuid. As you install those packages in this folder, in your application folder, so automatically this entry will be added in package.json. So you have to make sure that these modules, these packages are showing up after installation in package.json. Then I have just added one script here to start my application. I'll show you how to use this later. And these are the basic information of your package.json. As you create a new application, this package.json will be created with name, version, description. Okay, let me show you what all folders I have in this project. I'm at the root of my project where I have this package.json. Package log.json, you need not to make any changes. This package log.json is created automatically when you build your application with all the dependency and third-party dependencies and so on. This is the structure of my project where I have a config, roots, then controller, then service, then repository, and data models. And I also have a util to have some constants, useful files. So let's see the configuration file. We'll see the configuration file. It's very simple. Okay, let's start with the configuration file, what we have in configuration file. So in
I've opened my database configuration file where I've given my database URL MongoDB localhost 27018 and these are database name. So if you see here, I'm trying to access the MongoDB database on localhost but on port 27018. As I said, I have done the port mapping of container MongoDB 27017 to 27018 of my localhost. So this is done.
to us. Now, what I'll do is I'll show you the repository layer. And before that, let me show you the model class first. So I have a books model. Here the business object is a book where all my operations are surrounding the book object, like adding of a book, then getting all the books, finding a book, updating a book information or deleting a book information. So hence I have a book as a business object. So if you see here, I am importing a Mongoose module here. This Mongoose module is coming from what we have installed, what we have mentioned here in this dependency. So Mongoose is loaded here in a variable Mongoose. Then we are creating a schema out of this Mongoose, and we are creating an instance of this book. We are creating an instance of this schema as a book schema and defining the attribute of that object. So the first attribute is uuid. It's type of a string. Second attribute is a name, that is the name of a book. It's also a string. Then third attribute is author name, who is the author of that book, is again a string. And release date, what is the release date of the book, and it's of type date. So we have defined the structure of our object, what all attributes are there in that object. Finally, when this is done, we'll be exporting this book schema here. So what we are saying is module.export, and using mongoose.model book schema. So whenever we want to perform operation on a book object in MongoDB, that time we'll be calling this schema. Let us see in the repository class. Okay, let me open the repository class now. So this is my book repo.js where I have defined this book repository class, and I have a constructor where I'm initializing the book model. I'm passing the book model from outside. Whenever I'm using this class, so I'm passing a book model from a calling component. Okay. And then in this class, I have defined few methods like add book, where I'm passing the UUID, name, release date, and author name as a parameter. And then what I'm saying is this dot book model. See, I'm performing an operation on a model. I'm performing that operation. This dot book model dot create. Mongoose is kind of a ORM, object relation mapping, which help us in creating a mapping between our domain object with a collection, okay, in database. So we are directly performing that operation. This dot book model dot create. It will create a book object with this data: UUID, name, release date, and author name. Now I have a second method where I'm getting all the books available in the database. So this dot book model dot find. Find is a out of the box method provided by Mongoose to get domain object, right? And domain object here is a book. So it will get me all the book object available in the database. I'm also writing another method to get a book by UUID. So this dot book model dot find one, and by passing the UUID, it will get me a book with that unique ID. Now I have another method to update a book where I'm passing the data UUID, name, release date, and author name. So in this, I'm calling this dot book model dot find one and update. This is the out of the box Mongoose method to update an object in MongoDB. And here I am passing the UUID. It will first get the object for that UUID and it will set the value for that object. Right, friends? Then I have another method delete book by ID. Again, we are passing the UUID to find an object and then delete it. So how are we deleting it? This dot book model dot find one and delete. So in above we were doing find one and update. Here we are doing find one and delete by passing the UUID. So it will delete the book object in MongoDB. And finally, what we are doing is we are exporting this repository class. If you see, this is the repository class. Out of that repository class, we are defining module.export is equal to book repository. Now this repository class is used in my service layer in book service. So let us see the book service now. Okay, so now in book service, we are importing a UUID module, and then we are also importing our constant module that we have defined in our util package. So in constant module, I have defined some of the messages with their status code. I'm defining 200 and the respective message that operation is successful. Same way 201 when the record is created successfully, 404 when no record found, 500 if there is any internal server error, and 422 when data validation fails. So these are some constant messages I have created. So I'm using that with the name custom resource response. Okay. Now I'm creating a book service here, class book service having constructor. Now in this constructor, I am passing a book repository. So book repository, we are passing it from outside and we'll be using this object book repo to perform all the operation. Okay. Now I have defined add book. Okay. And before that method name, we are putting a async keyword. This tells that this method is asynchronous method. It will run asynchronously, right? That is the power of Node.js. Need not to wait for or hold for that operation to complete. Okay. So I have defined a method add book. We are getting a request object. Then from request object, we are retrieving the body. So from body, we are retrieving all of that. And we are generating a unique ID using a UUID module that we have imported above. We are saying UUID.v4. So here we will be getting 16 byte unique identifier unique string. Now we have that, and at this line I am saying that this dot book repo, because book repo is the object that we have passed in a constructor, this dot book repo dot add book. If you remember, in the book repo we have defined this method add book, and it was accepting all these 4 parameters: UUID, book name, release date, and author name. So we are calling it that we are calling the repo method in this service class in add book function. Then we are checking if the book object is created successfully, because that method is returning a book object. If not, if this is null or this is empty, then we are sending the error message with the status code. That server error, we could not save that book. If a book is not empty and having a proper object, then we are setting a message that that book is created successfully, and this is a status code. 201 is a status code that we are getting it. And data, in the data response.data, we are setting the book object itself. And finally, we are returning a response for this add book function. Right, friends? Same way, we have another method, getAllBook, in service layer, where I am calling this .book repo dot getAllBooks. This is giving me all the books available in our repository, in our database. And again, we are checking if the book object is empty or not. If empty, then we'll be showing the error message. If not, we'll be showing the successful message with those object list. Why we have said books? Because we are getting all the books. Hence, it is going to be kind of a list of a books or array of the books. Now, next method is getBookById. And here we are getting a request object. From request object, we are retrieving a unique ID. Okay. And by calling this repository method, this .bookrepo.getBookById, we are passing the ID here and we are getting the book. If a book is not found with that ID, we will be showing the error message that record not found. And if the book object is found with that unique ID, then we'll be showing the successful message here with the success 200 response code. And the data of response object is book, and we are returning a response here. Same way, we have update book by ID method, where we will be updating the book object. We are retrieving the name, release date, author name from the request object, and we are calling this method this.bookrepo update book by ID, and by passing all those 4 parameters: UUID, name, release date, and author. So book repository will find if there is an object available in database with this UUID. If yes, then it will set this new value for that object. If update is not successful, then we'll show the error message that record not found. And if update is successful, then we'll show a success message with 200 status code, and data is the updated book object. Same way, we have a delete method where we'll be deleting the object by calling this book repo delete book by ID by passing the UUID. If delete is not successful, then we'll show the error message, and if delete is successful, then we'll be setting the message, status code, and the body accordingly. Finally, after all this operation, we are exporting the book service. If you see here, module.exports is equals to book service. Okay, friends, so you need not to worry about all of this code. This code and this project is available in my Git repository. You can download the code from this Git repository. I'll be sharing a link in description section of this video, so you can clone this project and start using it. All the instructions how to compile and run this application is given in README. I have given the architecture diagram, then I have explained the prerequisites, all the commands, how to start, how to test. In fact, I have also shared the Postman collection in test Postman folder. So this JSON you can import in your Postman, and you will have all those operations ready to test. So in testing, how to test, the instructions are there. to import the Postman collection and start using it. And these are the endpoints that we have defined as a part of this application. We have post endpoint, get all, then get by ID, update by ID, and delete by ID. Okay, so just download this repository in your local and start using it. Okay, friends. Okay, friends. So now I have shown you the book service. Next, what we'll see is the controller. Our controller component calls the service. So now we will see a controller. So in this controller, you can see I am importing the book service module. I am also importing the book repository module. And then I am creating a book model by importing a book from a model directory. So this book model is created. Then I'm initializing an object of a book repository by passing the book model. Now I'm creating an instance of book service by passing the instance of book repository here. So I'm creating book service is equal to new book service by passing the book repository object that I have created at line number 7. Now I'm defining and exporting the method one by one in controller class as well. So I'm saying the method name is add book and it is going to run asynchronously. It has request, response, and next parameters. And in this method, if you see, I'm calling the method of service layer, that is book service dot add book, right? If everything is fine, status code in response object will be is getting set accordingly. If there is error, then error will be printed here. Same way, I have a get all method where I'm calling the book service dot get all books. Get book by ID, then I'm calling the book service dot get book by ID. Same way, I have update book by ID. So I'm calling book service dot update book by ID. And I have method delete book by ID. So I'm calling book service dot delete book by ID. So all the methods in the control layer is calling the methods of book service layer as we have seen in the architecture diagram. Right, friends? Now we will see our routes component. Now, friends, let's see a root component. What routes, what endpoints we have defined. So this is my book routes.js file where I'm importing Express because Express give me all the libraries and functions that is required to create a web application or mobile application or microservice applications. So using Express only, I can define a routes. Then from Express, I'm creating a router to create route, all my routes. Then I'm also importing a controller because I'll be calling the method of controller for each and every route. So if you see, my first route is it's of type post and it is to add a book saying /book/add. So whenever user calls this /book/add, I'll be calling book controller.addBook function. Then I have another endpoint of type get /books, that is to get all the books. And here I'm calling book controller.getAllBooks. I have another get endpoint /book UUID. That means I want to get books by unique ID. So I am calling method here book controller dot get book by ID. I have a put method. The endpoint is /book UUID, and I am calling a book controller dot update book by ID. Then I have delete endpoint /book UUID, and I am calling controller dot delete book by ID. Right, friends? So routes is taking a request and calling the book controller function. And finally, we are exporting module.exports this router. So this router is now exposed. Now let me show you our main server application JavaScript file. That is our book server.js. This is where is the application is getting stitched and our application is starting. So this is our JavaScript file to start our microservices. So here I am importing Express, body parser, and Mongoose module. Then I am also importing our custom responses from a constant file. I am loading a database configuration because we will be connecting to database. as I shown you in a database config, I have a URL of database, so that I'm importing it here. And then finally I'm importing a routes because I'll be routing all incoming requests through a router. I'm creating an app using express function. Then in app, I'm saying that I'll be using the body parser. And if you see line number 13, where I'm connecting to a MongoDB database. So mongoose.connect, and in the connect function, I'm taking dbconfig.bookmongo URI. That means I'm passing first parameter is the URL of my database that I'm passing through database config, and then it is printing console.log that MongoDB is connected if it is successful. If there is error, then I am printing a error here in catch block. Then I'm defining all my routes by saying app.use the endpoint of my application and book routes. How the endpoint will be created? I will say localhost 8080 /API /v1 and then the endpoint what we have defined in our routes. Then these are some error handling for 404, how to send this message if the URL, if the user is entering a wrong URL. So we have to show this message. This again an error handling. Finally, we have defined at which particular port we want to run our application, that is 8080. And then at this line number 37, I'm saying app.listen. That means I'm saying start my server on this port, app.listen port 8080, and I'm printing that book server started and listening on a port, right? So this is where my application starts. Okay, friends, clear? Now what I'll do is I'll start this application and then we'll be testing these endpoints. I'll show you that.
Now what we'll do is we'll run our Node.js microservice application, and that will run with the Mongoose ORM. It will automatically create the database and required collections automatically. So we'll see that now. I'm in my project directory. I have all the file and folders of my microservices in this directory as I shown you in my project description. So now I will run my application node book server.js, right? So this is a command to start my application. Let me do that as I shown you that it will try to connect to a MongoDB which is running in a container. Let us do that. Yeah, so it says the server started and connected. Now what we'll do is we'll test our microservices using Postman API tool. Okay, but before that, let us see if the database is created in MongoDB automatically. So I come back to a compass. Let us refresh. So yes, you see this book database got created automatically with the books collection, right? Because as we started our server, so automatically Mongoose ORM had created this database and collection right inside this MongoDB. With me, friends? So now what we'll do is now we'll test our microservices through a Postman API tool. Okay, friends, so now what you see on your screen is my Postman tool where I have this collection. So here is my collection Node.js book microservices with MongoDB, where I've defined all these endpoints. Let me open this get all books. So here I am trying to access localhost 8080 API v1 books, as our microservice is running on 8080, hence I am trying to access on 8080 port. Let me hit this endpoint and see if I am getting any data, because I know there are no data in my database, right? So it says though the request is successful, 200 response I am getting, but there is no data in database. So what I'll do is first I'll insert a book into my database. So I'll say my book 1 and Pavan, and it is releasing on 15th July 2023. If you see the URL here is of type post localhost 8080 /API /v1 book add. So this is our API, this is our endpoint to add book into repository. Let me do that. Yes, so again, so I got 201 response. That means the item is created, and in the response I am getting the object that is created in MongoDB with the UUID, unique ID. This is a primary key of my object. This whole key is the primary key of my object. So here the name is my book 1 and author name is Pawan and release date is 15 July. Let me copy this ID, and now I'll hit another endpoint, get book by ID. So here in this URL I give my ID is a path parameter, and if you see, it is a get type of call where I am saying localhost 8080 API v1 book, and then the ID of my object, ID of my book. Let me hit this and see if I am getting the object. Yes, so I am getting the book object by ID. That means my get by ID endpoint is working fine. Now what we'll do is we'll update this object with a put operation. So here if you see, I have a put operation, and then it is localhost 8080 API v1 book, and again taking a ID of my object, which object I want to update. So I'll push, I have pasted the ID that I have copied, right? I have pasted the ID that I have copied in previous window, and now I will say my book name is my book 2, and now it is author name is Modi, and I'm changing date to 10th of August. Let me update it. Yes, so it says 200 response, and the object is updated with the same UUID. Now the book name is my book 2, author become Modi. And now what I'll do is, let us again try to get that book with ID and see if we are getting the changes. Yes, so if you see here, I am getting a data with updated information. Now next what we'll do is we'll try to delete this book object in our repository with the same ID. So if you see, I'm using delete as a method, and my endpoint URL looks like localhost 8080 API v1 book, and it takes the ID of my book that I want to delete. I'll just hit this and see if this is deleting. So yes, it says 200 response. That means that object is deleted, that record is deleted in database. Let me try to get again by ID if this book exists or deleted in database. So it says no record found. That means that record is deleted. Let me try to do a get all, if I am able to get through get all API, but I am seeing that it is empty. That means the object is deleted successfully. Let me insert one more time. Yeah, so now the object is created, and I can do a get all, and this is now my new primary key to access that object, and I can copy that primary key to test with get by ID. Okay, so yes, so I am able to get that object now, right friends? So we have tested all the operation: get book, add book, update book, and delete book. So all these operations are successfully performed. That means our microservices is working perfectly fine with a MongoDB in Docker container, right friends? Now what we'll do is we'll do a quick cleanup, because it's always a good practice to stop all the services that we are using. So if you see, I'm running my microservices. So let me stop that microservice first. ps-ef grep book server. So it says this is, let me kill this, 10-9 83181. So it will stop my microservice server. Yes, so it stopped. And now docker ps, it says my MongoDB container is running. So what I'll do is I'll stop this. Docker stop this container ID. So it will stop that container. Now if I'll do a docker ps, so no, it is not there. Right friends, so we have done the cleanup also. So it's always a good practice that if you're not using, so stop all your server and services, right? With me?
Okay friends, so now let me summarize what we learned in this tutorial today. I gave you introduction of Node.js microservice project with MongoDB into a Docker container. I explain you the project with an architecture diagram. Then I'll show you the prerequisite for this project, what all softwares you need to run through this tutorial, right? So I've shown you all the prerequisite. Then I explain the basic of Docker container and Docker Hub repository. Then I shown you how to download a MongoDB tag, MongoDB image from a Docker Hub repository. Then I shown you how to run that MongoDB image into a Docker container. Then I explained you the node modules that we have used in this project like Express, Mongoose, body parser, etc. I have shown you the code implementation of all the component of microservices like routes, controller, business layer, repository, and our data model. Then I have shown you how to run the microservices and connect to MongoDB running in a Docker container. Finally, we tested our microservices through all the endpoints where we have tested get all, get by ID, then add item, then I have shown you update item and delete item. So all of that we have covered in a Postman tool. Right friends? So if you like this video, so give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, so do subscribe to our channel to grow Code One Digest family.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Good plan. Good talk, all right?
Friends, if you like this video, so give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for the more interesting videos. Click on the bell icon for the latest video notifications and do not forget to share this video with all your friends and colleagues. This is very useful information for students, beginners and software engineers. I am putting a lot of efforts in creating these contents. So please help me growing the Code One Digest family. Please subscribe to Code One Digest channel for the latest programming and technology related videos. Thank you.